Hello everyone, this is Steve Blay. I'm the founder of OmahaPokerTraining.com. Today I'm going to be showing you all the features of our multi-table tournament simulator. It's going to allow you to play any kind of multi-table tournament you want to set up against our virtual opponents. I'm going to walk through all the options, and you may be familiar with some of them already, especially if you've used AdvancedPokerTraining.com, which is our no limit hold'em training site. Many of the options are exactly the same here, but I'm going to walk through them with you anyway, and it's possible some of the options you see might be slightly different than what I described in this video, because we are adding new features constantly, but we don't always update these videos quite as regularly, but I think it will look pretty much the same as what you're going to see here. So let's jump right into it. So the first thing I want to cover is this box here that says no theme. If you check this, all of the distracting images in the poker game, the background images, the avatars of your opponents, things like that, will disappear. So if you just want to play on a plain black background without all the distractions, you can check this and you'll see the difference once you start the poker game. So let's look at this drop down here that says type. This will select the general type of tournament you want to play in, but a lot of the options, you can still customize them after the fact. So pick something that would be typical to the normal tournament you play in. This first one is called the Online PLO Turbo. It's going to be typical for a turbo tournament on an online poker site. You've got Steve's Poker Tour, which would be kind of like a daily casino tournament, all the way up to the 100K. The 10K World Championship would be kind of like the structure of the $10,000 PLO World Championship at the World Series of Poker. So you pick one of these. I'm going to start with the Online PLO Turbo, but you notice below you can still customize the number of players, the minutes per level, and the starting stack to whatever you like. This buy-in and entry fee over here, this is also customizable. The buy-in is how much of what you pay goes towards the prize pool. The entry fee is what actually goes to the house, to the card room. So here in this tournament, it would be $33 to enter this tournament. $30 would actually go into the prize pool. $3 would be the entry fee that the card room would keep. The skill level here, now keep in mind, regardless of whatever tournament type you select over on the left, you can still modify the skill level to whatever you want with this skill drop down. So I want to make sure that's totally clear. The type of tournament you pick does not affect the skill level of your virtual opponents. The only thing that affects the skill level of your virtual opponents is this skill level drop down right here. So I can click on these buttons here that say show levels and show payouts to look at the different blind levels. Now again, of course, I can modify the number of minutes at each level, but I cannot modify the blinds at each level, if that makes sense. So if you come in here and you don't see what you like, you can try a different tournament. For example, I'm going to go back to the type drop down. I'm going to pick the $10,000 World Championship. You'll notice the blind levels are very different in the $10,000 World Championship event. So pick a tournament in this type drop down here that has blind levels that are similar to what you're used to, because you can't actually modify the blind levels themselves. Nor can you modify the payouts. So again, you want to find a tournament that has payouts that are similar to the payouts at a tournament that you would typically play in. Now, when I say you can't modify the payouts, obviously when you change the number of players in the tournament or the buy-in, that's going to change the payouts. What I mean is you can't manually go in and modify the payouts. So I'm going to do that here just to demonstrate. I'm going to change this to have 1,000 players, and I'm going to change the buy-in to $500. Now when I click on show payouts, obviously the payouts are drastically different than they were before. So all I meant is you just can't manually go in and set up whatever payout structure you want. Finally, up here, you've got this checkbox for use big blind ante. Now, by default, this is not going to be checked because a lot of PLO tournaments do not have antes at all. But if you'd like to use a big blind ante, you can go ahead and check this box. There is not an option on OPT to use traditional old school antes where everybody pays a small ante on each hand. So you either have the choice of no antes at all, which is going to be typical for a PLO tournament, or using the big blind ante. So down here on the bottom, you'll notice this first checkbox here says practice mode. Until you check this box, a lot of the options below will be grayed out. Right now, this is not that important, but as of the recording of this video right now, we don't have leaderboards and a trophies page on OPT. You may remember that from advanced poker training if you've used our No Limit Hold'em training site. Once we have a trophies page and a leaderboards page, any tournaments you play in practice mode will not affect your ranking on those pages. Because when you're in practice mode, you can do things that would be considered cheating. You can peek at your opponent's cards. You could tell it to always deal you double suited hands with pocket aces, things like that. It would enable you to always win the tournament. So if you do want to set any of those options, you'll have to check this box that says practice mode. So I'm going to go ahead and check it now. And then let's go down the list here. The player mix, you can see that your choices are everything from very passive to overly aggressive. This will affect how your virtual opponents play against you in the tournament. Real quickly, I'll go into the advisor settings, although I've covered that in other videos. You can go in here and you can pick one of 10 different advisors, and you can decide whether you want to only get advice when you actually press the advice button, get the advice every time you make a decision, or this last choice here, you can choose to only get advice when your action you chose is different from the advisor's preferred action. So let's go back. Down here you can set what position you want to play from. If you only want to be dealt in the big blind, if you only want to be dealt on the button, just for practicing, you could do that. Now here on hands to deal, you can have it deal you all hands, which is going to be typical, or if you only want to get playable hands, hands that could, most likely open for a raise in a lot of situations, it'll deal you playable hands there. And if you want to deal a specific category, pick this last option here. And as you'll see when you hover over this question mark here, you'll see that we separate all PLO starting hands into 76 different categories, and you can type the numbers of the categories you want to be dealt in this box here. So I'm going to click on this link here to get to the 76 categories so you can see them, and you'll see that, for example, category number 5 is double suited rundowns. So if I only wanted to be dealt double suited rundowns, I could just put 5 in this box here, and you can you could put 5, 6, 9 through 12, anything like that it'll accept. Finally, this last box here says stage to practice. If you only wanted to practice one stage of the tournament, maybe probably the most typical would be practice playing on the bubble or practice playing from in the money. The only important thing to note about this is if you pick one of these options, it's not going to play like a normal tournament. It's always going to deal you in that exact situation. So if you say you want to play on the bubble, for example, it is going to fix your chip stack. It's going to make it so that there's one more player to be eliminated before you get to the money, and you're going to play that same situation over and over again, meaning every single hand your chip stack will be reloaded to the same amount, and you'll keep playing right on the bubble so you can practice on the bubble. Going over to the right side here, allow peeking at opponent's cards. That's self-explanatory. If it's checked, you can peek at your opponent's cards in the game by clicking on them. If you say you don't want it to save your hands and stats this time, this tournament will never get saved to your database. As you probably know, every hand of poker you play on OPT is saved forever to your own personal online permanent database. If you don't want any of these hands to be saved this time, just check that box. And finally here you can use a 4-color deck if you'd like to. And then the action timer down here, I'll cover this really quick also because we go over it in other videos, but if you'd like to use the action timer, that's a countdown timer. You can decide how many seconds you want to act at each decision point. You can decide whether you want a warning sound to play, and a time bank. Most of you that have played online know what a time bank is. You get a certain amount of extra time, bonus time, to make really difficult decisions. And if you run out of your initial time, for example, here you've got 30 seconds to act. If my 30 seconds run out, then my time bank would get activated. But the time bank never gets replenished. It will just, you only have one time bank for the entire tournament. And finally, at the bottom here, when you run out of time, do you want your hand to actually be folded, which would happen, of course, online, or do you want to just just get a warning that you ran out of time if you're just doing this to practice. So if you want to simulate playing online, for example, you probably want to have a 30-second timer on because that's, for most poker sites, that's about the most you're going to get to act. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this, and then you can see here as we get to the game that up at the top here it's going to show how many minutes are remaining at this level. It tells us the blinds, the current blinds, and the current ante if there is one, and how many players are remaining in the tournament. And when you click this tourney info button, you'll see that it's going to give you more information. It's going to tell you what table you're at, how many tables there are remaining. You notice tables break from highest number to lowest number, so that's, you can tell how soon it's going to be until your table gets broken. You can look at your stack and the average stack, and later on in the tournament, anytime there's fewer than 50 opponents remaining, it's also going to tell you what your current rank is as far as your 23rd out of 50th place as far as how many chips you have left, and it's also going to tell you how many chips the player that has the biggest stack currently has. And then again down here you can look at the levels again if you've forgotten what levels are coming up, and you can look at the payouts here. That's about it. In the rest of the game, we have a different video that will tell you more about some of the other options available to you on this page. You could watch the other video about our poker game if you want to learn more about those. That's about all for now. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for being a member of Omaha Poker Training.